Welcome back to the channel, everyone. We are here at 2LaneLife Garage. Look at that hat. Hey, we got some great things happening today.
We sure do. I mean, not only do we love to ride our motorcycles all over the country, we love to put cool parts and accessories on them for function and for performance, and we just like to look good, you know, on the road. So
we sure do. We've got a FXRP Fairing. Josh is going to talk through the bike, the build. We'd like to thank Klock Werks for the fairing, the windshield, and Thrash and Supply for what?
They have a top tree we're going to put on this, so this baby's going to look real clean in a little while.
Josh, get in here and tell us what we're up to.
So, if you're watching the video, you've either been following along on the 2021 Road King Special build, or you're just interested in the FXRP Fairing by Klock Werks, and today we're going to show you a little bit of both. So, this bike has come a long way, but it's about to get the finishing touch, which is the Klock Werks FXRP Fairing. We just got it back from the fairing exchange, got a fresh coat of dead wood green paint, and today we're going to show you, one, how to install it, two, I'm going to share why I'm actually doing this build compared to just getting a Road Glide, and we're also going to do the Thrash and Supply Road Glide top tree, and we'll explain that as well. So before we get into the install, I'm just going to share a little bit of my thoughts as to why I'm doing this versus maybe getting a Road Glide or a Street Glide or one of the bikes that come out of the box ready for touring. I've had a great time behind this fairing, and there are some other options as well, but this has been the idea all along. For me, this is my style. There's a ton of people out there with Road Glides and Street Glides, and I've always just had an eye for the FXRP fairing. So this fiberglass fairing is really only, God, it feels like 3 pounds, 4 pounds. Whole kit, maybe it's 20 tops. So you're getting the agility and nimbleness of a smaller bike with all the benefits of a larger bike. We're gonna show you how to install this bad boy, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Cool, so in my case, since I have this fairing on here, we're gonna remove that nice, easy trigger lock. Because I had that fairing, it is a 1/4-inch Allen to remove these screws for the docking hardware. But standard, you'll probably be using a Torx. And then after we remove all 4 of these, we are going to take off the nacelle. So now that we have the fairing and handlebar bag off, the first step to getting off the nacelle and all that good stuff is to take off the headlight ring. So you'll just get a little Phillips head, remove this screw right here, and then there'll be a bunch of little screws that you'll have to remove after the headlight ring comes off. Up next, there's just a bunch of little screws here. You're gonna remove, got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, something like that. And for those of you that are actually keeping the nacelle set up for your FXRP fairing, you're gonna wanna keep all this close and organized. I'm going to be taking this all off. So the only thing I'll need to keep is some of this headlight hardware. So we're removing the last screw here. As you can see, the nacelle is already starting to come apart because this ring here is what keeps it all screwed together. Got Galen helping me hold those up. We're gonna take that nacelle off. And now that we have the headlight off, we're gonna get into swapping out the top tree.
So in order to get these risers off, we had to remove the coupler here that has a bunch of the wires and take that off so we can get on those bolts. But got this beautiful Thrash and Supply top tree. It's got integrated locking on it. He can now see his Legend suspension nice and clear. These are 9.5 pullbacks with a high bend bar. And the good news is we didn't have to do anything to rewire or anything like that. We just swapped out. You want to make sure on the pinch bolts on the sides, you're at 30. On the bigger neck bolt, you're at 35 foot-pounds of torque. And then also 40 foot-pounds of torque on the riser bolts.
Yeah, and Josh was able to move these back. The stock position is here. He's back 1.5 inches closer to him, which was going to give him a much nicer ride. And like I say, this is beautiful. But when you're doing work like this, cover your tank, protect your paint.
Well, I was just going to also say, you mentioned the pullback position.
Yes.
So we have a shot, I think, earlier, but you could see there's 2 holes here.
Right,
one is a stock position, so the nice coverage, so you can't even tell that there's a hole there. So
this is beautiful.
I can't wait to start working on that fairing now.
Boom. So we took it a step farther by adding the Thrash and top tree, but if you had the stock top tree on your bike, all you need to do is add the bracket into the neck of the bike.
Yeah, and to do that, you've also got to remove the wires that are on these mounting brackets,
It's a little
and then we'll
harness plate.
slide that in.
because back here you'll find the holes that match up to these holes right here. And it's a pretty easy job.
So let's get started. Let's move these wires up and out of the way.
Should slide in
Put
nicely.
this bracket right there. I'm going to give you a 9/16 bolt. You can feed that through. There you are. Go. All right, so we've got the 2 bolts in through the bracket. We are tightening those with a 9/16, and we will put 40 foot-pounds of torque.
Or dad tight, whatever you like.
So we got both bolts started through the neck bracket here, and we'll get the 9/16 on them. A little tight fit, but it's going to be really nice.
And we're doing all of this to make sure that the fairing is secure, but we really like Josh, or I don't know if we'd be doing this.
Right? So we installed this once before just to test it out, and man, once you get this tightened up, the next couple steps are going to be pretty cool.
And if you look, while we don't have the fairing on, there's a nice Klock Werks logo on it.
Yeah, we thought before we get this on mounted, we've got these little top hat washers with a threaded screw in it, and a trick to this is screw that down about 3/4 of the way, then that'll give you some leverage to put it in. This is the windshield. I've already done the lights, and voila, she is in. We've got washers that will go in between that and the windshield, so we'll take that off, get this puppy installed, then put the windshield on. All right, time to get this fairing on. And one of the great things about this fairing kit is all the packaging comes marked with what bolts go with which area of the bike. It's also pre-drilled. And so when we did install it the first time, we noticed everything lined up and matched up. You don't have to drill anything. So first we're putting the fairing to neck bolts in. We're going to just slightly tighten those up. And also, in speaking with Klock Werks, when you do start to tighten this thing all snug, you'll hear a little bit of crackling in the fiberglass. Do not go past that. Just make sure it's nice and taut, but you don't want to really crank through this fiberglass.
We are having a good time getting nuts and bolts in there, but hey, it's part of the gig, right?
And you may notice we're not using Loctite, but these bolts, actually you can show them the nut. There you go. Look at the threading on that. So we'll tighten that up nice and taut. Look at this thing already, Josh. I mean, wish someone would wash their bike once in a while. So we're about ready to install the lower support. In the kit, there are 2 bags of hardware, one with crash bar and one without. In Josh's case, even though he has a crash bar, it's a smaller crash bar, so we're going to use the one without crash bar.
One great thing about this Klock Werks kit, we installed this before we had it painted. Every hole and everything that you need to put a nut and bolt through, it's right on. So this is a good, ready-to-go kit.
So it's always good to have 4 hands, right?
Yes, it is.
I mean, we got the nut up here, and we fine threaded that sucker.
So what just happened here?
Well, that was probably the toughest part of the install because that lower support, you want to make sure you've got that installed right. There's a tab that goes up into the top of the frame. If that's wrong, you may bend that tab. So what we like to do is we kind of installed the bracket first to make sure the holes lined up and it was flush, and then we went to work.
Then tighten her up, and man, this thing's looking great already.
Yeah, so as we tighten this up, make sure the tabs are inside the fairing. I'm feeling them here. There's hardware that goes through. Put your washers on. Make sure that you get the washers on the lower as well, because against this fiberglass, you want to spread that out a little bit so that you're not cracking into it.
So if this is the bottom of the fairing and here's the ground right here, you want your bracket on top of it, just like that.
Whoa.
Headlight?
High beam, baby.
Let's do it. So before you can put the headlight in, you take the stock headlight ring. We shot it with some black so you wouldn't see it as much. And we're using the bolt supplied, and we are installing it, and then the headlight will be next. And we're using a 3/16 Allen right there to put these in. The ring is installed. We have our Custom Dynamics headlight 7-inch halo.
Yeah.
I'm gonna feed this wire through. Galen's gonna grab it.
Pretty simple. Just clip it down, make sure it locks into place. This is excess wire. You don't need that for this particular install. We'll zip tie this all nice and tidy.
So now we are putting the final ring on to hold the headlight in place. Scalpel, thank you. And away we go.
So when you open up the kit, you'll have what looks like a big rubber round gasket. You'll have the lens. This gasket actually has a slice down through the middle of it. You need to put this around the lens. One important point is there's 2 notches on the lens, which indicates that's the bottom of the lens itself. So that's really important that you mark that so you know when you're installing to get it installed the right way. We do have these 7/8 washers. We are finding that we do need to put a little bit of back pressure on that washer as we're screwing this in to make it tight. But don't give up. Keep working on it, and you'll get it there. And then the last piece we're going to end up doing here is we're going to film Josh putting on the windshield, I think. What do you think?
I think that sounds like a spin out on Josh's side.
Well, looks like I got a screwdriver. You just watched the guys do most of the heavy lifting, and now I'm doing the finishing touches, putting on this Sport Flare windshield, also from Klock Werks. Same deal. You're just going to put in those little rubber fittings in there, make sure they're all set properly, and then it's pretty self-explanatory from there. Just make sure all the holes line up, put in those screws. I'm just hand tightening them, and then I'm going to use that screwdriver and get a nice light snug on them. But I'll tell you what, this thing is looking pretty damn solid. With the 3 of us, it took a couple hours, but if you had a couple extra hands and you were not filming, you can get this easily done in an afternoon. So it's all mounted up and it's looking incredible. We had put this on before as a test fit before it was painted. It looked great, and I'm pretty mind blown right now. Super stoked to get it out on the road on long trips, but also just as excited to take it home tonight, bring it back tomorrow. Speaking of which, I'm gonna film that, give you guys a little bit of a first-hand review. One, going home on the highway tonight, and then tomorrow morning, probably run into a little traffic and do some lane splitting and see if there's any differences in how it feels compared to a smaller fairing. So overall, super pumped. This was kind of the last piece to it being my dream bike. So I'm going to pass it over to the guys and they will close this thing out.
Well, I'm super excited. Brian Klock and Klock Werks, thank you for this FXRP fairing and windscreen. Looks amazing.
It is very amazing. It was an easy install. It's available at 2LaneLife.com. Get yours. I mean, because this thing is, you're going to love your bike when it has a fairing on it.
And you said easy install, probably 45 minutes.
Yeah.
You know, maybe a little bit longer, but 45 minutes, and that's quick for a fairing install. So they've got them for Road King, Softails, and all sorts of bikes.
I love it, man, and I can't wait to see the footage of Josh riding it. He's going to capture that for us. So what a great day, and you know what? We had fun doing this.
We'll see you down the road.
So it's been about a month since we filmed that install video. Never got around to doing the helmet cam, but the good news is in that past month, actually in the past 2 weeks, I put about 2,000 miles on the fairing. So maybe 3,000 in the past month or so. As you can see here, got some nice bugs on there. Anyway, I'm hoping to get out of here during the daylight today and give you guys a little helmet cam video on the way home, showing a little bit of lane splitting, and just giving a rundown on how it's been the past 3,000 miles. So we will see you there. All right, so got out of here in some sunshine. Gonna go hit Topanga Canyon, get through some traffic, and then hit the freeway. So if you haven't noticed, I actually went from the 9-inch to the 12-inch windshield right before a big trip. The 9 was pretty solid, but the 12 is definitely a lot better. People love cutting in front of you out here in the valley. It's amazing. But yeah, so we'll get a little test. Let's see, we're going about 60 right now. Really not much wind at all. So we'll get through some traffic, do a little splitting, and then I'll show you how it does on the freeway. So the good news is where the fairing sits, kind of like right here, is great because it really doesn't inhibit what you can see. So it kind of still feels like a pretty small bike. Obviously you can see I'm getting it through some pretty tight spaces. And the visor is up because I realized I haven't cleaned it since my trip up north over the weekend. And it's just full of bugs. So you might get a little more wind, but hey, I guess having gas was kind of important. So now we can hit the freeway. So here we are, hypothetically hypothetically going 90, nice and smooth. If I were to maybe be a little taller, you know, you hear the helmet getting a little more wind. It's not really choppy, but you go cruising speed and go a little faster. Like I said, because this is kind of sitting forward a little bit, you do have all this view out here, which is really nice. The dash is obviously super good looking. I happen to do it with the thrashing top tree, so I could mount the risers actually closer to me, so that the bars are right where they need to be. And with that, I got rid of the nacelle that comes standard on the bike and kind of cleaned up all the wiring. As you can see, you got a little integrated lock here as well. But you can actually keep the nacelle, and Klock Werks has designed it to be able to work with that and still, you know, have a little bit of clearance within the inner side of the fairing. But overall, you know, I've gone on a couple trips, really stoked on it. I love the fact that you're not getting any wind to the body. You know, if you kind of go right here, maybe you won't be able to see, but there's a nice pocket of air. We're going to do a little bit of experimenting with covering up those vents with the light pods, for example. I'm going to put the lower fairing on down here and just kind of see how that affects the wind. But overall, really comfortable with it. It was super solid testing it out on these past 2 weekend trips. And actually this weekend we're going to go head up north. We're out to Kernville, so you guys will see that soon. And then the weekend after that we're going on another trip. And yeah, you know, one thing I really like about this setup is how light the front end is. Personally, I'm not a speaker guy. I could care less about the nav. I've got the phone and the Cardo headset, and that's my favorite. So having this front end super nimble, I mean, on a road glide, you know, at high speeds, like I said, you don't feel it. You don't really feel much of a difference when you're moving, but at low speeds, that's where it really comes to make a difference. So this thing in the canyons, this thing around town, I mean, just steering even with one hand, it's so nimble, so light, and those are pretty much the main reasons why I chose this. So like I said, the build's pretty much done. Gonna enjoy some miles on this thing and see how it goes. So hopefully you guys found this video useful. Don't forget to reach out if you have any questions, especially if you do purchase the fairing from 2LaneLife.com. And you know, like, subscribe, all that stuff, and we'll see you down the road.